It's serious, dude.
Yeah.
This is
But
funny.
I don't, I would have time.
Okay.
So November meeting, and that's as things wind down, couple of things, as we go through, first of all, we'll get our reports and then we'll dive right into this. Secretary Treasurer is celebrating her birthday in Texas. Our secretary, our treasurer's here, her daughter. So what's the tally on
our money.
yeah,
Okay, so we had a few expenses this month. We paid out for our winners for the honey contest. So those Man Lake gift cards went out. And then we paid our PO box fee, and then we also paid our periodic report filing fee with the Secretary of State. So our accounts are PayPal is $97.51, and Alpine Bank is $3,310.09. So that's where we're currently at now.
we'll just wait till.
No, I can do it now. So there's not much on the media report this month other than, like, so we've still got the YouTube channel and stuff. We do have the application up for next year. A few of you have done it. A few people I think have missed the PayPal link at the bottom. So make sure if you haven't done that, you can either jump on there. You don't have to fill out the application again, just click on that link and jump over to it, or if in a week or so, we'll send out a direct link in case you haven't done that. But yeah, we are asking everybody to refill out the application. Even if you've done it last year, do it again, please. So, because I've changed a few things, added a few additional things that weren't on there before. So other than that, I think we're good to go.
The only thing I have is, don't forget those of you that want to come to the Delta Beekeepers. That's on the 18th of this coming Monday. It's in Delta on Highway 92 at the Oddfellows at 6:30. If you have any questions, directions, come see me and we'll get you there.
Cool. And then he's gonna talk a little bit about the Cottage Industry Act. Last month, it wasn't really detailed, but Tracy has a lot more input and insight and as it pertains to beekeepers and honey. So anyway, you know what the question is?
Have you been doing mic checks lately, then feel sorry for your bee.
Anyway, so they should all be buttoned up. Can you hit the light back there? We're gonna get through this real quick because we got 4 guys that are gonna be doing something unless you can see that there. How's that? Okay. Winter readiness. Are you ready? Ready or not? It's here, isn't it? I had in Blake Park, I had 16 inches of snow that hit that one storm. It's kind of melted down a little bit, but we don't have near that in the valley. I overwintered in Blake Park for a number of years, and it is a challenge because the winter comes early and stays late. And so, are you prepared? Here it comes. How much weight is enough weight? You see there's frames of honey as you're looking down in. For the valley, we say minimum of 80 pounds. 80 pounds. So that would give you an idea, at least 12 frames of honey. And preferably 14 to 16 frames of honey distributed through the 2 double beams. And that would be to be able to overwinter. Our winters lately have been a lot less severe, not as much of cold snaps. But that is not the problem. The problem is when it warms up. Anything above that 40 degrees and they start breaking clustered, and they start moving, they'll go through their stores even more than that 35, 40 degree constant weather. That's why the guys up in Canada and northern United States, they overwinter in buildings. And the reason why is they can keep that constant temperature in a building at about 40 degrees. And that is perfect for conserving the stores of the honeybee. Anyway, so if you're there, if you're not there, we're gonna talk about what to do. It's a little bit light here in a minute. How many bees are enough? We just mentioned this. A couple guys are saying they have a neighbor that, Adam has a neighbor that has a hive that is just bonkers, just, you know, would you say 60,000 maybe?
Easily.
60, 80,000. So the problem with that is that many bees, you gotta feed them. And so hopefully that is still a representation of the summer workforce that has not yet died off. That's what usually happens this time of year. By now, you are dealing with winter nest. The winter nest is all just the nurse bees and the young bees, all the workers of the fall have died off. And so this winter nest is what's got to carry you all the way into March. Now, that's too many bees, too many mounts. So if you're open up the lid and you're seeing that, then you've got to get prepared because they'll make it all the way through December and January, but through January and February, that's when they starve to death. Because there's just too many, and that's indicative of different types of bees, the strain of their genetics. Some are made to be more conservative, and some are made, basically, they have raised their bees with the genetics to populate real quickly, and so they're hard on stores. Most of you, if you bought bees from me, we run those Saskatraz, and that's the best of both worlds. They are conservative, not as conservative as the Carnolian, but they also will brood up early. So they overwinter well, but they brood up early, and so you have the best of both worlds. Anyway, so you want, going into winter, anywhere around 30,000, 30, 40,000 bees, and that'll carry all the way through just fine. Trace, just jump in there anytime you want to add something on. Okay. The winter nest. So the winter nest should look something like that. It's between their huddled in that ball between two deeps. So that is what a cluster looks like. So they cluster together. And the reason why they do that is to generate heat. That winter nest, when it's cold, they fall up together. The outer bees will literally, through the vibration of their wing muscles, that generates the heat, and through their head, and through the back of their wing muscles and through their head will produce heat. That's why you'll see when you're doing when you're looking at a dead out, the bees that died to starve to death. And all the bees have their head inside the comb and their tails are sticking out. Have you seen that? Basically what that is, they didn't starve to death necessarily because they might be just a couple frames away from honey. And you say, well, why did they have their head in there? Are they trying to get nectar or trying to dig out the last remnants of honey? No, that is a heater bee. That's their designation, a heater bee, and that's what they're doing. They've got their head inside and they're generating heat towards the center of the cluster. And that's what they generate that 90 degrees upwards to upper 80s into 90, low 90s all year long. Now they don't have brood. If they do, it's very little. And sometimes they'll try to continue. If they're a real strong colony, will raise brood all the way through winter if the weather is relatively mild. If the severe weather, they can't, but because you just don't have the ability to generate enough heat to keep those and the stores, the food, because it's not only the carbohydrates, they also need the proteins. And so that means they have to have leftover bee bread that carries them. And they usually, that is what triggers that spring generation of brood is when they are bringing in the first pollen. The very first spring pollens, which in our neck of the woods is usually the dandelion. Right on the heels of the dandelion, the globe willows actually are producing the first pollens. But anyway, so right now they're clustered up making the world. Now we're talking about insulation. Should we insulate? when I answer this question, it's usually, it'll help the bees if you do it right. If you do it wrong, you're hurting the bees. You're causing them to go through the stores. Here you'll find, you go online, this is one of the first, when I typed insulation for a beehive, that's usually what comes up, some type of wrap, and it's black. And some people say, well, wouldn't be black be great because it'll absorb heat and keep them warm? In some places, in some locales, that is good when the temperature is 20 degrees and lower, sub-freezing weather, that is okay. But here in the Grand Valley, well, we have a number of days that are 50 degrees. Now, if you have a black wrap on top of that, you're going to be boosting the inside temperature considerably. And what happens on a warm hive? Well, they start going through their stores. And so now the inside of that is reflective. You see the silver? So that one is reversible, or some of them, I don't know if that one is or not, but if you want to insulate, there's you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, one of those home builder stores, and you can get that bubble insulation. And I was gonna bring some, but I couldn't find any, and put it all away. And basically it's bubble wrap, very small. It's not the big bubbles, it's just a reflective silver insulation, has an R value of 3. And so you can wrap your hives in that, just wrap it around, staple it, make sure you cut out the entrance so you don't want to block them in. So when they can fly, they want to do a cleansing flight whenever they have warm days. And that will give them an extra R value of 3, and that won't overheat them. It'll help. Also, insulating the lid is a good idea. And we're going to talk about a couple things here in a minute about quilt boards and some of the things that you can do there. Any questions on insulation? Some people throw hay bales. I have a couple people that I sell ducks to every year, and they try to overwinter every year. They're natural beekeepers, and we're going to hit the magic lottery number there for them. They're going to overwinter one of these days, but they'll throw hay bales. They like everything natural. They don't like to use any miticides of any kind, and so far they have not been successful yet, but they're going to get there. But they throw hay bales around. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say about insulation is don't insulate too early. You want that colony to get the idea that it is winter and let their summer bees die off and get down to their winter nest and then insulate them. If you insulate them too early, they can stay big, like he was talking about. They can stay too big and then eat up too much of their stores. So you want to make sure that you let them get down to their winter nest size and then insulate them.
Yep, good. Other questions? Insulation? It's a big one. Yeah.
I just think that you don't need to do it. I mean, in fact, I think if you do more harm than good, it is silly.
Yeah, there's all
I
kinds
used
of
to keep
thoughts.
bees up outside of Meeker.
Yeah.
And we'd have, in the early 90s, it would be half the days in January would be 20 below or colder at the house. And I never insulated and I did great.
Yeah.
You know, I would replace a queen every 4 or 5 years, and
How long ago was that?
early 90s.
Yeah, there you go.
But, you know, I mean,
Before
the
this whole
cold
thing
didn't
called
bother
Broad
them at all.
Distributor.
I mean,
Yeah.
in Grand Junction, to be doing that silly stuff.
Oh, yeah, and that's the
To me,
thing,
it's-
back in the glory days, there's all kinds of things we didn't have to do hardly anything, and they just take care of themselves, but you've got a lot of things that are against them, so any.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand it's.
Yeah, but, and there's a lot of different thoughts, a lot of people don't insulate, and some do, and I'm saying if you're going to insulate, then there's a couple of ways that will benefit without hurting them, and that is, don't wrap them in tar paper, nothing black. Don't put anything black on you. Some have darker colored hives, you painted it the darker colors, and you gotta know that also will absorb heat as well. So if you're wanting to get away from that, then you can wrap it in that silver reflective.
I read somewhere that the lowest documented temperature where a beehive has lived overnight is minus 44 degrees.
Yeah.
It might be more, might be some lower than that, but that's the lowest documented case. I don't know where it was. I don't remember. I read
So I had a 40 below in my house and it didn't build the bees, so. You know,
I do know this is that Alaska does not have any year-round bees. Every year Alaska orders notes, every year, all the Alaska beekeepers. Every single one of them, except for down in the lower peninsula of Juneau, in that area, anything Anchorage and above, they all order notes.
They would have to go to going inside.
Yeah. We did have this on Okay, quote boards, let's do quote board, come on up there. Hey, you can turn that on for a minute.
Jason asked about how I used to overwinter with using a quilt board. And so the last 9 years, I've overwintered this way. And I've had my losses, I don't believe have been from my overwintering process. It's been other means. So this is just ideas, just get you guys thinking and you guys can consider using this or not. But if this is your top box, so, you know, obviously you got double deep there. So this is gonna be your top box. Hopefully this is mostly already capped out with your honey. Again, that in itself is going to give you some insulation as well. So there's a couple of things that I would do. This time of year, as you get ready to go into winter, you kind of have to play. I would bottle feed as far as I can into the year. And if you have some type of an in-hive feeder, that's fine. You just have to keep feeding that. It's better that way. And you go to 2 to 1. I meant to look it up before tonight. I can't remember the actual freeze temperature, but it's below the 32. I think it's somewhere around 24 degrees is when the 2 to 1 will start to freeze. Typically that has it here in the floor of the valley. That has been usually around the 1st or 2nd week of December as to when that will start to freeze. So from that point on, you're not going to do any good bottle feeding. But here in mid-November, as these temperatures start to drop, you're going to have to consider not doing a bottle feed inside the hive, because each time you open that up to redo that, you're taking that heat out. And if there's not enough time in the day for them to regenerate that heat that was lost, you're hurting those bees. So you're going to have to transition to do basically an open feeder. With that, you might be feeding someone else's bees or some additional wasp that's in the area. It's just something you have to take into consideration if you're going to go that route. That's how I did it, and I was very successful. As the temperatures start to drop again, what I also do is I make my own winter patties. Man Lake, this is just a little 10-pound tub, but they sell 10 pounds, I think a 30-pound or something like that. So, and of course, like everything else, it's gone quite a bit up in price, but I would just make them my own patty. So you buy this here, it's just a big goo of stuff. And so you get some parchment paper, lay that out. And then I just scoop that out to roughly about 3/4 to a pound at a time. And then just flatten that out. And then all you have to do is lay that right on top of here. And you're going to do that before the temperatures get too cold. But again, you're going to get to a point where you don't want to open that up at all again until the spring. So you can do a couple of things. If you're not going to do that winter patty and you go to do the quilt board, you can just use a queen excluder, or you are going to do a patty, some type of a lip. I just kind of made my own little thing here, and what that does, it allows me to put the winter patty. I can still put that right on top of here. I'm not going to have to worry about smashing that down. Once I have that, some type of a screen on there, either your queen excluder or whatever, you can use a burlap bag. A lot of time, and that's what I did for a long time. And I found it a lot easier just to buy some screen. It's a lot cheaper and faster. You just lay that screen right on over the top of that. And then I would just use a medium super and put that on on top, and that's gonna be your quilt plots. Now, what I've done, and I modify these, you do not have to do this, I've experimented both ways. But what I did is I just drilled some holes on the side, and then you can see there, I just stapled some screen in there that allows so that no other bugs or whatever else are gonna get in there. But here's the concept, similar to your attic. You have that on here, start to lay sawdust and usually some type of like a rabbit bedding or gerbil bedding, something that's gonna absorb moisture, because as the condensation comes in here, if you don't have something, it's gonna start raining, basically giving your bees a shower. And as it gets cold, that's another wave that's gonna kill off your bees. So you want to control that condensation a little bit. So again, I just start filling that up with the vent here. I've usually filled it up to right at the vent. And what that also allows is for just the natural air, even the cold air, to kind of dry out that bedding that's in there. And you'll find when you put your hand in there, it's amazing just how moist and wet that really is. There's a lot of condensation goes on. Anyway, so I have that there, and then I just place my lid on top, and I'm good to go. So, and then I leave it alone until the spring. Yes.
I changed my bedding out a few times throughout the winter. Is that okay? Because when I felt into it, I
You know,
was like,
that's your choice. If it's a warm enough day and you think it's warm enough earlier in the day and it's going to continue to stay warm, because it doesn't take long, just a little bit of that, and that heat's gone, okay? And then they gotta work harder to regenerate that heat to keep them moving. You know what I'm saying?
just be mindful of the temperature when I do change it.
I'll say that again.
Just be mindful of the temperature when I do change it
Yes,
out.
very mindful. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so I would just caution doing it, but that's the beekeeper's choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't. I've never have done that, and I've done just fine. Yep. So this is really not, this is more just like a winter feed rather than a high mixture of a pollen, like a pollen patty. As the pollen is gonna, again, generate and trigger for them to you know, they think it's time to start brewing up and going into spring. This is just extra food. And what you'll find is, like, if you are in it again, you won't see them usually hit this again in December or early January. It's going to be late January, into February, maybe first part of March. That's their last ditch effort. You know, there's other things you can do. You can do the candy board concept. You can do dry sugar. I just didn't like doing those things, and this is a lot cheaper. It's a little more time consuming, but you know, if you've got a handful of hives or whatever, this is a really easy way to manage your bees and keep the cost down. Yeah. It's just through, if you go on Man Lake, it's just Pro Winter Patties is what's called.
That'll do how many hives approximately?
Well, this is a 10-pounder, so you know, if you're, again, if you go 3/4 to a pound, you know, if you go at a pound, that's 10 hives. Yeah.
I didn't know how much you put it, I didn't know.
Yeah. Usually about a pound or to 3/4, somewhere in there is sufficient.
Finish.
So, any other questions?
One of the things, one of the things that also will help with what Tyler's saying is because of the condensation that comes down, what happens is that heat rises, the condensation goes off the lid or that inner cover, and then it starts raining on them. So you're not able to do a quilt board. What you can do real quick to help is to elevate the hive stand. And you want to elevate it from the back towards the entrance. So the water, if it is running, is able to run out the door. You don't want it to puddle up in the back of the hive. So you want to elevate that, I don't know, inch, 2 inches. What I do is I get a level, as soon as the bubble breaks, The other side.
You can do as little as about a quarter, it doesn't take much. Once that condensation starts making drops, it'll start running.
Yeah, and that's, yeah,
So when I was doing my, for the mines. Just the last few days, I had taken the bottom board out to check the board. And I have water on that bottom
Yeah.
board, so should I already have my little box and everything on?
yeah,
It's been
this
in the
is, if you're gonna do a quilt box, this is the time to do it. Yeah.
So is that water that's maybe on that board, and it's on the
That's-
side of the
Yeah,
entrance?
and all that is from condensation.
So I need.
And the great thing about Grand Junction is the low relative humidity. We're rolling about 12% or less at times. So we don't have a lot of problem, like some areas. Back east, it's huge issue.
The huge issue, yeah. Yeah, what we used to do is take underneath of the bottom board, we'd buy leveling shins, like you do for a cabinet or anything, and just run one in each side underneath of the bottom board, so it tilted at that quarter inch or so, and that was enough. And I have seen water running out the front door in more moist climates than here, of course.
So just make sure, because a lot of times we like it level and flat when we're working them, but in the winter, elevate it, just so that, like you said, it doesn't take a lot, but. And that's, again, underneath the hive stand or the bottom board, underneath the bottom board. Not between the bottom board and
Yeah. What I've always done is I take it like a wooden roller, cut a little piece off, or rock or anything. And like the wooden roller, you can put a couple of little white nails on it and just stick it on the edge of my top cover. And that way, when you put the lid on there, it doesn't seal it off. It's got a little vent on that, and that vents it and keeps it.
You're talking about between the inner and the outer cover? Yeah,
Yeah.
put a little rock up towards the front, right where the cutout is, and so that your outer cover.
Well, I usually put it on the back. I don't know why, but I put it on the back.
Either way,
Either way, yeah, I never thought of that, but
It's better.
I just put it in the back. And so you're raising the cover up where it's, half inch or so,
yeah,
it's not laying flat. So then all along that edge is a vent,
is a bit, yeah,
and that's very important.
it is.
That's the most important thing I've ever done for winter.
Some of the folks in Virginia would have their inner cover, and they would cut a popsicle stick in 4 pieces and glue them on all 4 corners. So when they put the outer cover on, it raised it just
Yeah.
that much,
That's
but it was
the same
all the
thing.
way around, so you had plenty of.
Right.
thick.
I just put it on the back and it fills it up, but it doesn't, in other words, it's cover doesn't seal it.
It's not,
it vents.
the inner and the outer.
But it's a small enough vent that bugs or something, other bees don't get in there. But it vents and that works. Perfect and it's easy. That's the easiest thing, but that's the most important thing. If you don't put that in there, condensation will kill
Yeah.
So, feeding, there's different types of feeders. There's a top feeder. I have found that is an awesome way to drown bees. And a lot of them. Yep. I have probably I still have 50 of those that I won't give to anybody. I don't. And I drown a lot of bees with those. Okay, there's your bucket feeder that goes on top, which that's the inner cover right there. And then you'll put another deep on top of that to cover that, and then your lid. So if you're doing feeding, right now, it's probably, you need to at least have 50-degree weather to be doing a lot of feeding. This is the jar type of idea, and then frame feeder. This is a feeder that is inside the hive. So there's different types of feeding. If you need to do some supplemental feeding, they're really light. And you wanna try to save them, and then flow forwards along the way. Okay, pollen patties. Here we see there's snow on the ground, and he's got her opened up, and he's doing some feeding. This is probably a springtime, getting ready for springtime, and so that's but you're gonna be dropping a pollen patty in there. Yeah, it's real. You gotta really watch your temperature when, what Tyler was saying, if you're gonna crack them open. It'll stress them pretty good, and any stress, extra stress in the springtime is really rough, and we'll get there when we get springtime and talk about how to build them up with pollen patties and get ready for that early spring flow. There is a really great spring flow here, and it's really hard to capture. But some of the best honey in the valley is a spring flow, and very few people are ready to capture it. But I think this year we're gonna, those of you that overwintered well, we'll get you built up, and if you want to try to do that and build early, have some pollen patties available for you and know how to stimulate them. There's a number of things that you can do to stimulate artificially and get the bees thinking that, hey, it's springtime. And so they start, the queen starts laying eggs, and the bees will start covering that brood. So anyway, again, and that's what we're after. At the end of it all, we still have a queen and bees and everybody's happy. Okay, and then Doug has a few things now.
Okay, so this year for the swarm line, I actually took down all the addresses and stuff, and then I plotted them in Google Maps. So that's approximately in the valley where most of the swarms came from.
These are all the swarms that took place last year. Or earlier this spring, yeah.
It's, yeah, people like, some people in the past have asked me, well, where were they coming from? So you can kind of see that's where most of the calls were. We did have a few outliers that were outside the valley. We can go to the next slide and see that one.
That looks pretty evenly distributed.
Yeah.
There's not really one area.
So if you're looking on the map and you can see, if you're living real close to one of these swarms, probably yours. You wonder, hey, my bees were doing really, really good, and then what happened? Well,
There's a lot near North Avenue.
You know,
I always found this very interesting. Yeah, downtown, look at all these downtown areas. It's pretty wild. There's, so, and now these swarms, they could be from backyard beekeepers. They're, especially down here, there's no commercial guys down here. So either that or feral colonies that have swarmed. So don't know, but these, this year, there was 2 calls that I got. One was from a dentist and one was from a orthopedic surgeon in their offices that I had to go do cutouts. And I didn't think there was any beehives that are close, but there sure is a lot downtown now. Some of these outer places, and then over here, and then what were you saying there, Doug? That's
yeah, you can see there's a couple of them out that were way out there that we got. So this is just on Google Maps. So in the meeting minutes, I will we'll share out the link. So if you want to zoom in, and because you see how clustered that is, there you might be able to see a few more if you zoom in on it. But
so if you'll be able to go on the notes of the meeting, and then you can pull this up and zoom in a little bit more and see where they were. But I appreciate Doug doing that. Thanks.
Is there anything we can learn by that, with it, especially the last slide there of Westwater where there was all those swarms?
well, that one's just a farther zoomed out, so you could see that we had some up in Colburn, and we had some over. We had one all the way out.
Okay, that's still
Yeah,
all just grand.
yeah, that's why it's so small. And then
I was wondering if there's any type of, vegetation area that
no, it just
create more.
basically
swarms.
what's telling you is somebody's not taking care of their bees, so they're swarming.
Yeah.
But it gives you a kind of idea on
I'm gonna tell you what my yards are, because there's 5 of them on there that are from me.
Thanks, Jason.
Trying to help you.
Freebie.
Bee check. You wanted to.
Yeah, so bee check is, they're trying to work with pesticide applicators, so you can, if you want to set up an account with them, you can log where your bees are located. And a lot of I'm hearing more and more the reputable pesticide applicators are usually trying to get onto something like this and see where they're at, and they'll give you a call. I mean, over the last couple of years, Olathe Spray has at least called me and said, hey, we're gonna be within half a mile of your house on this day. Not much I can do about it, but I appreciate the phone call, you know, so it seems to be more and more, so.
I have a screen bottom board. Should I be changing that out?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Got it.
well, let me ask you this, do you get upset when somebody leaves the door open in the middle of the winter of your house?
Yes, those ding dogs.
Actually, on 3x4, 3x4 for a long time. If you don't have time to put it out, just get 3/4 inch foam insulation. Cut out the inside size, shove it up in there.
Okay, because I don't know if I can lift it myself.
Yeah, so if you're lifting to put that in, you might as well.
Yeah,
And you got an ability to move that different motherboard, that's,
Not like,
yeah.
yes. I've also made these.
Now, some of them you can slide a sheet of coroplast in the back,
so mine has this.
at least do that, if you can. So, and that'll help a little bit, but it's, and then what I would do, because that backside, slide it coroplast, and then the backside, you have a little bit of gap. You run some duct tape across that whole opening in the back, and that'll help a lot. But
I'm gonna try on Friday because it's in the 60s, but
Yeah.
it's me being able to lift it.
Just put the entrance.
Tracy's gonna do a little bit on the Cottage Industry Act and what is kind of required for us.
Okay, we had the guy come last month and talk about, he knew a lot about commercial stuff, but I really don't feel he knew a lot about the cottage food industry. What I'm gonna go through here is on their website. It's easy to find. If you just Google Colorado cottage food, it'll bring you to some of this stuff. But I'm also going to, I've been selling honey here through the Grand Valley and Fork Valley for about 10 years now. And so there's some things I'm also gonna go over a little bit about taxes, about how to pay your taxes on what you do.
So the C word.
Yeah, the nasty T word. Okay. If you want to produce under the Cottage Food Industry Act, okay, these are the things that you have to have. You must be a Colorado resident. That's probably not a big deal for none of us. Operate as a cottage food business as a single person proprietor or an LLC with 2 or fewer owners. Single proprietor just means you're going to put it on your own tax return. That's all that means. You're going to put it on as hobby income, give it to your tax person as that, and it's going to go under your social security number, not under an EIN like a business. That's all that means. Be present or have a designated representative available in person to answer questions and sell products directly to the informed end consumer. There's a lot of words there, but basically somebody's going to come up to you and ask you something if you're selling the honey. Hey, where's this honey from? What were the bees feeding on? You have to be able to answer those kind of questions. If it's not you, whoever's selling your honey needs to be able to answer those kinds of questions. That's all that means. And they're technically, we'll get into this a little bit farther down, they are serving as a personal representative of yours. Okay? An approved food safety course. They're online. You can, if you have a regular commercial food handling card, that's above and beyond what the cottage food industry requires. You can either take the cottage food course or the other one, either one, because you just have to have training. They say having a copy of their food safety training. I've never seen anybody with one on site, so don't worry about that. Not to exceed net revenue of $10,000 per product. Probably not a problem for everybody,
Yeah, Tyler.
but here's some of the nuances you get into. Cream honey is different than liquid honey. A quart is not different than a pound. It's still liquid honey. That still goes in the same 10,000 bucks. If you do cinnamon cream honey, then that's a different product. If you sell comb honey, that's a different product, but remember, all liquid honey is one product, whether it's in a quart, a gallon, a 2.5 ounce bear, it's all liquid, okay? I don't know, if you've got a problem with that, then you're doing good. Okay. Where can it be sold? Out of your house. Where you sell on the internet. You can sell on the internet your honey. It has to stay within the state of Colorado. You cannot ship outside of the state of Colorado. That's the big thing with doing it on the internet. Farmers markets and similar venues, roadside stands, we all understand about that. Fruit stands, all that kind of stuff. It cannot be sold in anywhere like a grocery store, anything that requires a health inspector to go by, like a restaurant, absolutely off limits. The local clothing consignment shop, yes, you can sell out of there. That business owner has to become your personal representative and know a little bit about your business and things like that. You must have this placard, whether you sell in person or on the internet, and you have to cut and paste this statement. It can't be you paraphrasing it, whatever. This product was produced in a home kitchen that is not subject to state licensing or inspection. This product is not intended for resale. The other thing, you cannot resell. I can rent a shelf from somebody in a clothing store and I can put my honey up there. I cannot sell him a quartz and then he puts it up there and marks it up. Seems like a weird thing. You can do it one way but not the other, but that's how it's legal. Just let you know, that's legal.
So, Dan Round, who came out here for that bee tour last year, his bee shop, you could put honey in his store, but you had to sit there and say, hey, this is my price. He did not resell, he sold it, but he sold it at your price and he gave you the direct, so. As far as.
So you weren't wholesaling it to him, he was just letting you.
Yeah,
sell
you
it to
just, you had to put it
Right.
on the store shelf, so that's another way to kind of give.
There's all kinds of ways around this and I'll go over another one in just a minute.
Yeah, how does that affect you? Because we've had people come up to us saying, you know, I want to buy 5 gallons of honey. And we know of one couple that's come to a lot of the farmers markets
Yeah,
that'll buy 5 gallons of honey, rebottle it or bottle it and put it under their name and then sell it at the farmers markets.
hey, they were a customer and you sold them a 5 gallon bucket, they use a lot of honey. As long as you're not in on it, I wouldn't worry about it. You see what I'm saying? Once I sell it to them, that's up to them, what they do with it. I didn't know they were gonna rebottle it. You know?
So there was a question that came through on Zoom. We can answer real quick.
Okay.
It says, can I mail my brother a gift of honey in California?
As long as you're making it a gift, as long as you're not selling, then if you're not selling, it's not under the cottage food industry. There's a couple people up near Denver.
I wouldn't worry about selling, shipping it out of state anywhere except for California.
But again, as long as it's not
Off
a,
the chain.
as long as it's a gift and not a sale, it doesn't matter.
There's people around in the Denver, Colorado Springs area who have come up with a great idea, and they sell everybody's cottage food industry act in a store, just like you think of a regular store. They are a personal representative for each and every one of those people, and they sell them shelf space, so they're not wholesaling it, and they're getting around the law that way. So it is possible to have it in that kind of setting, but you have to do it a specific way, and I'm sure they're gonna be checked. They don't like it. Let's see. How do the cottage foods need to be packaged and labeled? They have to be packaged, they have to be labeled, okay? Product name, producer's name, physical address. Mine does not have a physical address on it. It's got my phone number. They can find me. Producer's current email or phone number. It has my phone number actually and my email. Production date. Mine does not have the production date on it. Complete list of ingredients in descending order by weight. That's a technicality, and honey, you really don't have to do it because it's one, it's one thing. It's not a mixture of two things and all that. So anyway, especially my label says Shiloh honey, so it's honey. Some states have a little bit different on that. The state it was from before, the word honey had to be the biggest or most prominent word on the front label. So you could highlight it, or you could italicize it, or you could make it a different color. And so that's what popped out, and then that was good enough for an ingredient label. In this state and where we are, I wouldn't worry about putting ingredients honey, honey. I just wouldn't worry about it. Mine doesn't have it either. Disclaimer statement, this is supposed to be on every bottle that you sell on a sticker. Never seen one. In 10 years of selling, I've never seen one. You have?
I haven't, his has it.
No, I don't. I know mine has a top part on it.
Oh, I put it on it.
No, I don't do the, I
This
don't,
up,
yeah, the product, whatever indication, that's on my labels. That's
and I would think that's
the
a,
other one ain't.
I would think that's a product of around here. You go up to some of the bigger cities where the inspectors come through. Different, farmers market and stuff, you probably better have that on there, or they're gonna tell you to put it on there.
I've
tried to-
seen,
I tried
I've
to
seen the
coach
bigger,
on this.
I've seen the bigger one on a few products, like people that have been selling cakes.
Cakes and stuff.
Where they have multiple ingredients, but I've never seen the big one on the honey. I've seen the small one. I've started putting the small one on my honey. But not the
I've
big
seen
one.
this 8x10 frame on somebody's table at farmers markets, stuff like that, but I've never seen this bottom one on anything.
The only time I ever did that bottom one was when I did a nutty honey. And it was on its own little tray and there you go, but it was almonds and. Yeah, almonds and walnuts,
Right. I tried to,
but I don't do much,
nail,
I don't do much with nuts because everyone in the grow is allergic.
trying to nail the guy down on what they would do if they actually come to your product, and he just wouldn't say. I can tell you that in the state I came from in Virginia, the only option they had is they could make you remove your product from the table for that day. That was the only recourse they had. You could come back the next day and set up in the same spot and start selling again. There's nothing, and they're not gonna send an inspector out to pay somebody every day to come out and tell you to close down. That was their only option, so, take that for what it's worth. All of this is if you're trying to follow the letter of the law, but most of the stuff I've never seen. You all last month heard me talk about the guy about the physical address and how they're not gonna push anything like that. They're not out here to bust anybody if your house number is not on the label. This is all about what you can and can't sell. We're all selling honey, so I'm not gonna go through whether you can be flavored vinegars or not. Products that are not eligible, not worried about it. Samples being provided. When I give samples, I have the container and I have the spoon, and I put some on the spoon and I hand it to them. I never have the jar out for customers to touch and fiddle with and refill their own spoon and things like that. So I fill the spoon for them, whether it's creamed or liquid. And I think that's a safe bet. Same thing with toothpicks. If you have the toothpicks out there, you're gonna have the 8-year-old kid that comes along, picks up the toothpick, gets a sample and then re-sticks it in the honey to resample again. So whether you're using toothpicks or wooden spoons or plastic spoons or whatever, keep it in your control. That's the easiest way to do it. There's some stuff in here about having to use gloves and tongs and all that. If you're sampling honey and you're squeezing it out of a jar onto a spoon, you don't have to wear gloves because you're not touching the product. Let me go back. I think I put it up. No, that's not it. Maybe we can put this in the notes. We'll put this
Link.
this link to this page, because this is all things cottage food industry. It's got this is the checklist that I just brought up, that I was just going over. Now, and it basically goes through all of these things that we're talking about. I wanted to go over this one, training. There's 2 options, actually 3. But basically it's getting a food handler's cards, taking their food training course, or the third one's just like an other, if you have other kinds of training. They're very, very lax on this. I looked at mine in September and it's expired, so I'm going to get recertified, but it'll probably be January, so because I wanted to get through all of the honey sales and stuff before I did it. So that's why I'm not too worried about the training. I would recommend that you get it. Not that you're gonna learn a lot, You're gonna learn how to keep foods hot and cold, which has nothing to do with honey, but at the same time, more things that you follow, the better off that you are. Do foods have to be packaged and labeled? Yes, we already answered that. Can they be labeled as allergen free? No. Can they be labeled organic? No. If you make any kind of a claim about your honey, as far as how healthy it is, any medical, cures gout, good for migraine headaches, you make any kind of a medical claim, any kind of an allergy-free or organic, it has to be tested to prove that. And you are not allowed to be under the Cottage Food Industry Act if you're making any of those claims. Right, that's another thing. Don't make any kind of claims. I have people come up all day long and say, oh, I heard it's good for allergies. Yes, I've heard that too. I'm not making the claim that my honey's gonna solve your allergies, but I'm saying, I have a lot of people tell me that, so it's probably true.
I think that's a good time to educate.
Yeah, and it
Right,
is.
it is, and a lot of people buy mine just before that. You're not necessarily, my wife and I will tell them, this isn't necessarily gonna help you,
Right,
but more often than not, people tell us that.
yes, and I do a lot of educating there, and that's why I go into why you want to buy local honey as opposed to store honey and things like that. But anyway, yeah, definitely good point. Already went over that. Designated representative. This is a good definition of somebody who sells your honey for you. A designated representative is a representative of the cottage food producer who is knowledgeable about the product and able to answer general consumer questions about this product. General consumer questions. They don't have to tell them how much fructose is in it and how much glucose is in it and what the moisture percentage is and all that stuff. They have to be able to answer general questions. An informed end consumer. All this basically says they've read those warnings that you're supposed to have on them, and they know that. They know that it wasn't produced in a commercial kitchen. That's an informed end consumer. Let's see. Can you produce multiple locations at events? Yes. Even if they occur on the same day? Yes. Yes, they can be sold on the internet, just only within the state of Colorado. No to catering events, because then you get into the health, you have to be certified by the health department. The last thing that I want to go over isn't on any of this, it's taxes. Taxes to pay on your honey. You have to charge sales tax. In Mesa County, the sales tax on food for ready consumption is 0. So you don't have to pay any tax. Technically, you're supposed to get a multi-event license. And when you make sales, you're supposed to take the form and fill it out and say 0 amount of it was taxed, and you're sending in 0 and you're supposed to send it in. Nobody does because they don't want all that paperwork for absolutely no good reason, I would think. But I just want to make you guys aware that technically you're supposed to do that, okay? If you go that way, you get into Delta County. Delta County does charge sales tax on honey. So does Montrose County. Only 2 of the 5 counties in the entire state charge sales tax on food for home consumption. Delta and Montrose County is 2 of them, okay? Delta County, you have to get a Delta County sales tax license. And you can't get it online, you can't pay it online, you have to go to City Hall and buy it, and then you have to pay the sales tax there. The multi-event, if you're going anywhere else, they have the thing online, you can get a what do they call it, a event license, multiple event license. And then you can all do it all online. You can go in and fill it all out and put in a debit card and pay all your stuff and no problem. It's really, really easy. Delta's just a pain in the butt. Make sure you know your sales tax amount for wherever you're selling and charge the right sales tax. Income tax. You're supposed to put it on your income tax, anything that you sell. I'm a firm believer in rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and I pay tax on every single dollar that I bring in. That's between you and the fence post, what you do with your income. I'm not gonna tell anybody they have to. I just like being above board about it. Then I got nothing to hide, and if something ever happens, I'm good. And the last thing I'm gonna say is all this stuff is good information, and I try to follow as much of it as possible. But as the guy said, the only time anybody's ever gonna come after you is somebody gets sick. And in 30 years, he's ran his whole career, months from being retired, and they have one that they maybe think a sickness that was caused by honey. So what are the odds that your honey is gonna make somebody sick? Yeah, slim to none and Slim's on vacation, that's right. So, don't worry so much about that. Do your best, make up your label the way you want it. And follow as much of it as you want to, but I can tell you, nobody is checking. There's no city in Grand Junction? There's no city. Right.
Every county, every city or township in Chicago. Because you may have a county that does not require sales tax, but let's say the city.
The city might.
The city of Fruita doesn't, but I'm just saying as an
Right.
example. You may have a city within a county that
Right.
does, but the county doesn't. You need to actually, if you're, I've done the research, anywhere in Mason County, you're exempt, it's under a food exemption.
Right.
But like Chris is saying, if you go into Delta or whatever,
Mhm.
you need to look at the county.
And the city.
And sometimes you need a sales tax license for both jurisdictions. So
Right.
If you're selling in the city of Delta, you must have a city and a county because the city relies within the county.
Right.
It's just them getting their revenue.
Exactly. And you have to have the state license too. Right. So, and if you go on anywhere that's not, what he's talking about, a home rule, Delta City is one of those home rules. That's why they do all their own tax stuff and they don't let anybody else touch it. Okay? If you're anywhere else, you can go online and fill out the form, and the form the state collects it, but then they send Montrose County their share, and they send Montrose City their share, or wherever it needs to go. So you just can go to one place and it's done. So that's what I do most of the time. But as far as labeling and safety wise, I like following all this stuff, and like I said, I'm certified, I got my food handler stuff and all that. But I can tell you guys, nobody is checking. And nobody's gonna check unless somebody gets sick, and we've already talked about what the chances are of that, so. Don't get scared and think, well, what if somebody gets sick, and do I need to have product liability insurance and all this stuff? Don't worry about it. Paonia Farmers Market made me get a product liability when I was selling there, but I stopped selling there. That was one of the reasons. They had to throw $300 a year away for nothing.
The city of Fruita, if you're doing certain events in Fruita, we make you get a special permit. So you have to buy like a Fruita Hall. You have to go down and buy a temporary sales license permit in addition to your state.
Yeah, the thing about that is some venues, you go there and you're gonna sell at this craft fair. They don't require anything. You go to the next one and they want product liability insurance. They want a copy of your state tax license. They want a copy of your personal liability. You have to have personal liability insurance, all this stuff. So each venue is different, and they'll, if you go to apply for one, they'll send you a list of what you have to have. So that you can, Apple Fest in Cedar Ridge, they check that you paid your sales tax for last year for Apple Fest before they'll give you a booth for this year. So you have to pay your taxes. But that's the only one I know of around here that does that. So, any questions on products, labeling, bottling, taxes? Good?
Who's never gonna sell honey again? I wouldn't worry about it. That's what Tracy is saying, is that they have these, the Cottage Food Industry Act was made not for beekeepers selling honey. It was for grandma that making apple pies or whatever, and so there's a lot of danger. And it was set in motion so that it helped the liability issues of those wanting to sell muffins and cookies. Okay, so we're not under the same rigor as commercial selling.
And in a lot of states, the honey has its own law. And then you have cottage fruit or whatever they call it in their state. This state found it wise to lump it all together, and I don't think it should be together just because honey is such a safe product, but
Yeah.
that's the way it is, and that's the law we're working.
There was live enzymes in the honey found in King Tut's tomb. The honey was still alive. 5,000 years, still alive. That's how powerful honey is. I don't know if I'd want to taste that stuff.
Is that some water?
Heat it up, uncrystallize it, that's all you gotta do. Another fun fact is honey is the only food that anything alive will eat. From protozoans to bacteria to funguses, to people, to carnivores, omnivores, vegetarians, everything that is alive on this earth will eat honey. The only food.
Any other questions? Got it?
I'm good.
Okay, Doug? Good?
Okay,
Are you good?
I'm good for that unless we're gonna do the survey stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Survey.
Survey, yeah. And so with the last newsletter, we sent out a survey. Kind of disappointing because not very many of you decided to answer it, but of those who did, most people said we did a pretty good job. They like the information we've been given. You know, the few critiques were the Zoom, that some of the things weren't being able to hear. Hopefully with this new camera that we got a couple months ago, we're getting better quality of that. And I think the one thing we all need to work on a little bit better is repeating the question. So you guys way in the back, if you ask something, it may not pick it up on the microphone. So we're just, us up here, we're gonna have to just do a better job of repeating it so that it shows up on the camera. Other than that, somebody made a comment about having a way for you guys to submit questions for us to talk about. That one's pretty easy. We have an email address. Just if you think of something you want us to talk about at a meeting, shoot it to us. We usually have a board meeting, 2 weeks before we do this to make sure we know what's going on. We usually try to do it right after the Q&A. So anything that popped up in the Q&A for that month, we can address the next month. So if you guys are thinking about anything that you want us to do, definitely let us know. And then the last one, sometimes we did get a couple of critiques of just how things can kind of go off the rails a little bit, where everybody starts talking and it gets real hard to hear on Zoom, but that is what it is. It happens. Everyone wants to talk about it. So hopefully next year we'll come up with some more stuff, or if you guys have any other suggestions, feel free to let us know. We're here for you guys. And we're doing what we can, timely wise, but if there's certain things that you want to see, make sure you let us know. Hopefully next year we can get a few more apiary visits going on, some more road shows. We tried, and weather and stuff kind of messed this year up, but hopefully we could try to have 2 or 3 in early, a mid, and a late, kind of let it, especially the new ones.
You'd be interested in doing that. What I mean by a road show is where you go to a different apiary and they do some kind of explanation or event, such as, and what I'll like to do again, we did one a couple of years ago, is when I brought the early ones back from California and they were ready to do a split. And so it'd be about a month before anybody overwintering here would be doing a split, but that's a good time to explain the different ways and techniques of splitting, as well as making sure, if like a walk-away split, making sure that there is that split is viable to raise their own queen, or if you're going to purchase a queen, or if you're going to try to raise queens. Would you be interested in something like that? We'd like to do that again.
Or if you happen to be doing something a little bit unique. Last year we had somebody that had a top bar. Didn't have it anymore, but we went and got to look at the top bar. We do have a member out there who has one of the flow hives, and we're trying to make arrangements to make our schedule and her schedule work so we can actually go out to her house. So if you've got something unique you're doing and you want to share it with us, let us know. Do remember that if it is enough interest, there could be 20 people coming to your place. So we gotta make sure that we've got the logistics
Yeah,
worked out.
we had almost 40 at the
Yeah.
one there at the spring.
Yeah, and what we did find out, we tried to do 3 that first one we did, and we found that that was a little too much, so we're looking probably to do 2. And because after the second one, the third one comes around and everybody's getting a little tired, so. We're trying to figure that out, but it's still a learning curve. It's something we learn from being part of the Colorado State. They do it in different locations. We also have, as part of the Colorado State Beekeepers Association, we have access to their resources. So if there's something you guys want to hear about, we can reach out to other clubs and see if they're willing to come over here. We had somebody come over from Brighton last year that was part of our run show. And we did the different checks, so you could hear something other than us talk.
I plan on doing another one at my hives this year up in Eckerd. We had 5 people come out this last time, but it was kind of late in the year, so. We do one in the spring up in Eckerd and maybe we'll get more participation.
Any other comments or anything you said we need to?
So there's a question in the chat that says, what's the best way to uncrystallize? Somebody did say put the jar in warm water, but is there any other suggestions you might have in uncrystallizing your honey?
If you don't want to kill it, make sure you don't put it in the microwave. That's a lot of people, I'll have that question. And so there's a water bath is good, something that keeps it warm. About 100 degrees is what you want to keep it under that 100 degrees. Anything over quickly kills the enzymes. And so that live honey that we were talking about, all that great health benefits no longer works.
Everybody, I've read books and everybody has their own number as far as what kills honey. What I tell my customers, warm water, no hotter than your finger can take. And just be patient and let it come back to liquid. Also, whenever you liquefy honey, make sure it's 100% re-liquefied. Don't leave it with just a little bit in the bottom. Oh, that's good enough. Because it's going to crystal back 10 times as quick as it did before if you leave any crystals in it. So make sure it's completely uncrystallized. I have heard numbers all the way from 95 to 120 as far as how many degrees kills it, okay? My number that I tell people, he said, he's already told you his number. Mine, I do 113. And that's because they routinely record 113 degrees in supers in some of the really hot places in Alabama and places like that. So if I can tell my customers that I don't ever heat it any hotter than it could be in a hive, to me, then that's still natural. So that's what I tell people, but everybody's got their own number. Did you have a question?
Is there a better place to store it? So that I know pantry in the sunlight.
The question is how to store honey so that it doesn't crystallize as fast. 80 degrees, 80 to 90 is best. That'll keep it from crystallizing as long as possible. Dark is good. The farther you start going down, it crystallizes faster and faster and faster until it freezes. Once honey freezes, it completely stops that clock for crystallization. You can always thaw it out and then do it like that. You don't want to leave it over 90 degrees continually. You can darken the honey and you can cause some problems if you routinely keep it above 90 degrees for a long time.
Yeah. Will darken. And then also flavor change.
It starts building up HMF, which is a chemical compound when hydrocarbons break down. And it can become toxic if you leave it up there for a long time. Not anything that we would worry about. It's just, you don't want to leave it there too long.
If you've got like a significant quantity, I've got some old refrigerators that don't work. They've got modified and put in a light bulb and a fan. And I keep my bulk stuff in there right about 87, 90 degrees. It doesn't stop the crystallization, but it slows it way down.
It's in a bucket. Man Lake sells a blanket, a heating blanket that you wrap around a 5-gallon bucket. They work for 3 gallons as well. And it will, over time, liquefy solid crystal. And then eventually you're going to buy a bottling tank. And that's the best way to heat it up because a water jacketed bottling tank is probably the ideal method to decrystallize and because it has a dial and you can dial it to a very specific heat. And the other thing is agitation. So when it's being decrystallized, and when he's saying it's almost there, but you're still a little cloudy, just stir it and let it sit. The agitation will clarify it and that will take that crystallization out.
What happens is when honey crystallizes, the glucose comes together, crystallizes, and it expels the water. So then if you get a lot at the bottom and it's crystallized, it can't suck in enough water to re-liquefy, even if it's 130 degrees. It just can't because the water isn't there. So that's why when you shake it and you stir it, then you allow the water to get in it so that it can re-liquefy. Those blankets he's talking about for a 5-gallon bucket, I've had 3 of them. I had one go bad this last year, but I'm using one right now to get some honey uncrystallized in a 5-gallon bucket. If it's in a 5-gallon bucket, I just put it aside and let it crystallize and don't worry about it until I need it. That's what I do. I want to buy a honey cake, but I don't know if I'll be able to get that done this year. They're a little expensive.
Yeah, they're a couple grand
Yeah.
for a decent one.
As far as like individual jars and stuff, sous vide cooker is actually the best thing I found. Cause you can put it at 100 degrees or whatever.
Right, you can put it at
And it'll
99.
live forever.
Mhm.
It won't matter. I mean, it don't take long either, maybe an hour.
Yeah, because it circulates.
Yeah, it just circulates it.
Yeah,
And
that's-
you usually watch it just go from crystallized and then liquid.
Right.
Then you're golden.
I was gonna go to sous vide, but I used my wife's turkey, what do they call them? Roaster. Yeah, turkey roaster. And it works perfect. And you can put it way down on warm and keep an eye on the temperature and make you a little mark right where 110 is or whatever your number is. And that works really well too. The only reason why I didn't do sous vide is because this worked. If that didn't work, I was gonna go do sous vide because I knew that would work. I'd heard people do that and it works really well.
I got mine sous vide, but, and also it's through the phone, so.
Yeah,
Work, you're like, where's everything at? Okay, we're good.
yeah.
So.
You good? Any more questions?
Any answers?
Story about crystallizing in 5-gallon buckets. Hang the bucket on a board in the hot tub so that it was suspended. And it worked great. I've done about 4 or 5 buckets, but the kicker was one crystallized bucket had a crack. That wasn't a miss.
And water just works a good, doesn't it?
He's fun while it lasted, right?
Yeah.
Fun while it lasted.
And you know, imagine my wife would be saying, you did what? Okay. All right on. The last thing is the meeting next month. Just want to know if you want to meet or you want to skip December, and the next meeting would be in January.
We traditionally skip the city, right?
Well, in the past, we've done a potluck. But
We've done a potluck, we've skipped.
there's not a lot going on, but it's up to you. Usually, you know, in between the holidays, time is, people are always busy and out, so.
So the second Wednesday in December would be the 11th. Basically 2 weeks before Christmas.
No one wants to say yes, no one wants to say no.
Nope. How many yes? How many no?
Yes to what? Yes to skip or yes to potluck?
Oh.
Yes to have the meeting. Not to have the meeting. So we'll see you in January. And again, there is questions, if you have questions or you, can always post those to, our webpage.
Yep.
And, email.
Put them on Facebook, shoot them in an email. I mean, I get notifications constantly on my phone whenever they pop up and so I'm always checking it.
Doug's real good about getting back, so.
And no Q&A this month? or-
No, we're gonna, Q&A, we're gonna put that on hold till spring, probably.
spring.
We'll pick it back up. We'll pick it back up when bees start getting, probably the month or two before bees start showing. So maybe February or March, we'll pick it back up.
January will be the month that we start taking orders for nooks. Don't know yet. We'll see what, just kind of get it figured out. I'll let you know January. 1 million gallons. I want to keep it at two, I want to keep the price at 200, so usually I do like $50 per deposit and. Or I've done it both ways, always. I'll just see where I'm at, what we're doing, but I'm feeling, yeah.
What month don't we made it
Yeah.
to? Like by March or April?
Well, see, that's, yeah, but if you got bees in March, you made it.
Right. Once you start feeding them 1-to-1 syrup, you made it.
Yeah, I take orders all the way through May. But the first bunch of them show up usually that in April, May, all depends on weather in California. For all of us bee growers, we are under that gun. And it comes down to this, we have to have good weather to raise queens. The only queen growers outside of California, I mean, there's southern states, but the vast majority of all queens produced in the United States is California. There is Hawaii. There's some big queen growers in Hawaii, Big Island, Queens, and that's, I worked with them. But most of the queen producers are California. Just because the weather is just perfect, it's early in the spring. There's Florida, Texas does them, Georgia has a few. Louisiana, there's a few, just a very few. And it just, there are so many things that are, and the reason why California does so many, because that's where all the bees are in that time of the year. 80% of all beehives in the United States are in California during January, February, March. For the almond pollination. So that's why, and so you have all the drone population to make the queens. And if we don't have good weather, we don't have mating weather, or we had really cold weather, and so there's no drones. We don't start grafting queens until we see drones walking, not drone larvae, but drones walking. So they have to be hatched, and then we know we have 2 weeks after we see drones walking. 2 weeks before they are fertile, to be able to fertilize the queens. That's when we graft. So in 11 days, that queen will be hatching, takes her about a week, and then she mates. So when we see drones are walking, then we start grafting, and so that pushes that calendar. Whenever that is, sometimes it's in February. Sometimes it's May. When it's really wet, like 2 years ago when all the flooding took place, that was a really bad year. Last year wasn't bad. Last year, I think we're grafting queens in March. So that puts us in a viable queen in April, where we have a laying pattern, we can start selling. That was a whole lot more than you wanted, but you know.
So then don't forget the applications for next year are up. Please fill it out, even if you've been on the list. That makes it simpler for us, online as much as possible. Probably in January, we'll have a few applications to fill out for those who really are computer phobic. You got computer phobia. And then make sure you hit after you fill out the application, make sure you do hit submit. And then go to the PayPal, because the one goes to a spreadsheet and then the other one goes to our PayPal account. And then Kira and I and the board, we mesh everything together and make sure that you're on the email list and that you're paid and all that other stuff. So, and even if you're late, we will keep sending out emails to everybody, probably up until the deadline of March 31st, when we have to have it in, so we can get it up to CBA. So you'll get emails from us for the 2024 members up until that point, and constantly reminded, hey, don't forget to fill this out. So,
Should I get some?
yep.
Okay.
Yes.
The swarm list, I'll probably have that, we'll get that started probably around February.
Set the swarm list. So if you wanted to get on the swarm list, did you see all those swarms? That could have been you.
I know where you hide your eyes, so I know where I'm
Hang out here.
Be like, my
Yeah,
neighbor,
That's what I missed. You should see the one they got this year. It was a swarmy year.
my neighbor's got 4 guys that are 4 boxes high deeps. And he's not pulling down. And all, so I got swarm with traps going on there. It's close. Behind him.
Yep. Doug?
You just missed it. It was like last week, yeah. Yeah, I kind of wanted to go because they had Randy Oliver there. Yeah, so I don't know whether they recorded anything or any of that stuff, but yeah, it was out. Oh, speaking of the state, it just came in. I haven't had a chance to send it out to everybody. The state beekeeping is going to be having a booth at the National Western Stock Show, and they're looking for volunteers. So if you happen to be in Denver around that time and you want to volunteer, I know we get a lot of requests for help, but everything's in Denver. So we need to come up with something and start asking those people to come on this side of the mountain and help us out. So, but other than that, the other signups, like if we will see how we're going to try to do a mentorship program again and all that stuff, that will start coming out after, February, when we get ready to start rolling back up, and we got a good list of people on for the 2025 membership, so. Okay, I think we're
Thank
good to
you.
go. Have a good night.
Thank you.
I'm feeling